reminiscent of the 10-game run to get into the playoffs at the moment. Like, you're just building the start of something. Even the players last night joining in with the fans and singing the Bertrand Traoré song is very reminiscent of the Twanzebe and the Courtney Hawes songs that we had in the championship years in the LA.
I asked Dougie whether he thought what Emery had done for him, and his answer was pretty simple and a bit of a surprise really. He just said simpler, I feel more free in midfield under him, whereas I was a bit more restricted in under other managers. I think Dean Smith probably tried to play him too much as a defensive midfielder and it didn't quite work.
I do think the atmosphere at Villa Park in those 10 games did help carry Villa over the line into getting into the playoffs and going and winning it. I'm hoping we can get the same kind of momentum now with everyone singing from the same hymn sheet and pulling in the same direction, because I do think the atmosphere at Villa Park sometimes is lacking. I think now's the time that it really needs to take off and we need to do our bit.
The 1874 Show by the Villa View.
Hello, welcome to the 1874 podcast. It is the morning after the night before. A weary Gregg Evans has joined me fresh from getting back from Leicester. Just incredible scenes in the away end last night. Probably not quite as jubilant in the press box, Greg, but at the moment it must be an unbelievable time to cover Villa, because it's kind of come from nowhere a little bit that Villa are now genuine European contenders. Did they get the Gregg Evans seal of approval for being genuine European contenders now, sat in 7th?
Yep, hello Dan, and oh yes, of course they do. They are.
It takes a lot to get the Gregg Evans approval on these things.
Well, look, even Unai Emery said that they were contenders last night. So when I asked him in the press conference, so if he's saying it, then I certainly am going along with that too. Anything that man says, I'll listen to. He's an absolute genius, isn't he?
I mean, that seems to be the mantra of the players at the moment as well, and the fans as well. Now everything just feels as one again. We did a show last night, literally straight after the game, and it's always funny doing a show straight after the game because you don't really have any time to collect your thoughts. And I always feel like it's a bit of a mess, but people seem to enjoy it. Thanks ever so much for all those that tuned in. Absolutely incredible numbers on last night's show. But we said on that it does feel like it's all pulling in the same direction now, and it does feel a little bit reminiscent of the 10-game run to get into the playoffs at the moment. Like, you're just building the start of something. Even the players last night joining in with the fans and singing the Bertrand Traoré song is very reminiscent of the Twanzebe and the Courtney Hawes songs that we had in the championship years in the LA. So there are certain things that are coming together now, and as fans in that run, I felt every week Villa were going to win. And I feel like that again now, Greg.
Yeah, I wish I'd done the podcast with you last night because I'm feeling a little bit worse for wear this morning.
I bet you haven't drank anything.
I haven't drank anything. I probably feel better if I did. I haven't actually had much sleep now because I've been doing a couple of articles on the back of the game. One that went out this morning on The Athletic, just explaining a little bit about the process of how Villa signed Unai Emery and why they were right to do that at the time. The way that Steven Gerrard was sacked after that horrible night at Fulham, it felt like it was only going one way at that point anyway. But the decision to sack Gerrard actually in Craven Cottage was criticised a little bit in some circles, within football.
I mean, I don't. God knows why.
I think it was just the delivery of it, the fact that maybe wait until the morning and do it. That was just some suggestions from some people in the industry. But my point now was that the way that Villa acted with clarity and realised that they couldn't keep Gerrard in any longer and had to change, and have now obviously gone and got Unai Emery. It was a decision that was really worth taking, and obviously, but I've gone into a lot of detail in the article, so go and have a read of that. I won't go over that now here. We'll talk about different things, but it was just a note because obviously the supporters are singing about Purslow going to Spain in his Lamborghini, etc. I know it's a little bit of fun, but it was just a play on that to try and explain a little bit more about the process behind it. And while some other clubs are probably taking a little bit of time on deciding whether they should stick with their manager. I mean, we look at Chelsea with Graham Potter, Leicester, who have just sacked their manager in Brendan Rodgers, and moved on, parting of ways, and perhaps Nottingham Forest at the weekend as well. So that's going to be 3 teams that have left it very, very late in the season to make a difference, whereas Villa acted decisively early in the season and realised that the form at the back end of last season and the start of this season was not good enough, and that they had to make a decision. And look, what they did to get Emery in with enough time to turn things around. I don't think anyone at the club envisaged it being this good, because only Arsenal have won more games than Villa since Emery was appointed. But the fact that he had a lot of time to work some of his magic has been really beneficial to Villa. So I've gone a little bit off track there. What was your question, Dan?
I can't even remember, Greg, but I was enjoying this. I was enjoying listening to what you said. And anyway, just everything Emery seems to do at the moment just seems to come off again. I'm repeating myself a little bit because we should say Greg and I had a plan for what we were going to talk about in this show today, and it was absolutely unrelated to the game last night. But because of the way Villa won them, they sit 7th in the table now. The first time Villa have been in that kind of position at this stage of the season since the Martin O'Neill days. We felt we had to cover last night's game, and we've moved our other topic for another time. But everything Emery seems to do at the moment just seems to work. It says what a good manager is that he changed the game against Chelsea by bringing Chambers on. I've not spoken to you since that game. He took advantage perhaps of, a negative in the Kamara going off and turned it into a positive by bringing Chambers on and changing things up a bit. And even last night when he makes a sub with like 5 minutes left, he brings 3 players on and you just kind of think, it's a bit too late. Nothing's going to happen here. No one's really going to have time to come on and make an impact or do anything here. The game's going to fizzle out, and Villa again won't have broken down a team with 10 men with a little bit of time to do so. Bertrand Traore just comes on and with his second touch of the ball just scores an absolute worldy finish from nowhere. So everything that Emery does at the moment, he just seems to have the Midas touch, Greg.
Yeah, everything seems to be turning to gold, doesn't it? I mean, in isolation, you can't really say it was Emery that changed that game in terms of what Traore did. It was a misplaced pass by Mendy, a hopeful shot from Traore, which we've seen him do on many occasions, and he can produce that moment of magic, kind of. He's one of these frustrating players that often goes through games. You don't see him too much, but then he does something unbelievable, and you think, well, that's probably why he's worth having around. Is he the long-term answer to Villa's attacking issues? Probably not. It's something we could maybe consider in.
It's a £20 million player, though, Greg. He cost Villa a hell of a lot of money.
Yeah, I mean, look,
a few years ago.
As I say, it's something we can maybe monitor in the weeks and months ahead if he starts playing a little bit more. But I've got a story going out on The Athletic tonight, just explaining a little bit about why he was shipped out on loan to Turkey and his issues with Steven Gerrard and why he's in a much better place now under Unai Emery.
I look forward to that.
Have a look out for that. But yeah, with Emery, look, there's no coincidence that Villa are winning games regularly now because they're putting it. I almost feel like the harder they work, the more lucky they get in that respect. I mean, we can analyse every game in isolation and say, well, Chelsea had 27 shots. Most of the teams will score. If they have 27 shots in a game and so many opportunities. You look at Leicester, about a misplaced pass right at the end, a VAR decision that went in their favour. Some of the other games that Villa have played in haven't been quite convincing. I remember we did a podcast when I'd come back from a holiday in January, and I'd watched some of the games back against Southampton and Leeds, and they were slender victories for Villa. And yeah, there is an element of a little bit of good fortune in there, a little bit of perhaps riding their luck, but there's no coincidence that if a team keeps on winning games, there's a method behind that. Clearly, they're working hard in training. There's an identity developing. They're working hard for each other, which you can see. And I just think when a team's got that togetherness, that unity, that belief, that's why the results come. So it would be unfair to criticise Villa and say that they're just riding their luck, because there's a lot more that's going into it. And as good as Emery has been, we really do have to focus on the players, because I'm always somebody, as you know, Dan, when managers are under fire, and there's been a lot at Villa in the time that I've covered them. I often put it onto the players, because I think players have got to go out and do that. That they're letting the manager down a little bit if they're not performing or they're not doing what he's asked. But so credit to the players now for doing exactly what the manager is asking of them and executing the game plan, because it's working brilliant. And it's not for everyone. The long video sessions, the meticulous planning. Some days earlier in the season, they weren't getting any midweek days off. Some weeks, so it's been a long slog for a footballer at Villa.
No.
And they've had to really put in the effort. So fair play to them as well. It's working.
Yeah, it's a weird one, isn't it? Because when the results are bad, people do look at the manager, and as Villa fans at the moment, I think we're the results are going well and everything's going good, and we're looking at the manager, which is perhaps a little bit unusual. But you're right, the players deserve a huge amount of credit. I mean, I don't know whether you saw it. There was a Ollie Watkins interview with Tubes last week, and he was saying he loves a video session, Unai Emery. The video sessions are long, but you only have to look at him. Scored again last night, Ollie Watkins. His form now is bordering on the absolute ridiculous. He's just a little tweak to his game from Emery, because I don't think Emery's reinvented the wheel really with what he's actually told him to do. Now, I'm sure it's more complicated than what Ollie Watkins said in his interview about being told to stay close to the goal, stay in the middle of the pitch. And he's finishing at the moment. He's scoring all types of goals, all different ranges of finishes, Ollie Watkins. But the improvement in his game, the improvement in Konsa, Mings, McGinn, these are players that were getting written off in some quarters of the Villa fan base. By Villa not really doing anything in January, what Unai Emery's done is he's concentrated on the players that are already there, and he's improved so many of their games. I can't think of a player really that hasn't improved under his tutelage. Maybe Leon Bailey would be the only one. Maybe Luca Dean would be the only two that I could pull out, but they're kind of both in and out of the team at the moment, so it's difficult to get any consistency from them. But every player has improved. Even if you think of the goalkeeper, Emi Martinez, the Leicester game at home, he's kicking the ball out of play non-stop. He couldn't get enough of chipping the ball over the fullback's head and kicking it into the Trinity or the Doug Ellis in that game. But even since then, he's kind of reset as well, and his distribution has been a lot better. The improvement in the players that are already there is just something I've never seen a manager make so much difference to a group of players coming in. Konsa was starting to go a little bit downhill under Dean Smith, and then I think he really plateaued under Gerrard. Unai Emery's come in, and then suddenly like Martinez, Mings, Konsa, they're back to being the Wolves that they were in that lockdown season when nobody but you could go, Greg.
Yeah, even I couldn't go to some of the games.
That's true. The aways.
I only got one pass to the away games, so yeah, I didn't go to all of them. But yeah, no, I take your point. There's huge improvements across the board, and there aren't many managers, across the Premier League in more recent times that have had this sort of transformative impact. I mean, Eddie Howe at Newcastle.
It's quite similar, actually, isn't it? The two.
It's really similar. Yeah, Howe took over from Steve Bruce, where lots of players were underperforming. The same with Steven Gerrard. Lots of players were underperforming under him at Villa. Howe come in and Newcastle have been completely revolutionised under him. Pochettino, when he took over at Tottenham, taking over from Tim Sherwood, had a similar effect. But there aren't too many other examples. So Villa have struck lucky with Unai Emery. I say lucky because other clubs could have pounced on him at that point when he was coming in back in November. He decided that his time at Villarreal was up at that point. They were in the Europa Conference League only, having already won the Europa League, having got to the Champions League semi-final under Emery. So he felt that he'd sort of taken that club as far as he could go, and he wanted a new opportunity. Villa came in with the perfect challenge for him. But look, a lot of credit has also got to go to the owners, Christian Purslow, that the three of them, Nassif Sawiris, Wes Edens and Christian Purslow, between them, put together the deal to get Emery here. The funds that Sawiris and Edens continue to plough in make this project really ambitious for players and managers to take on. And it's getting there now. It feels like this was it felt like it was a turning point last night for me. The way that the players, as you say, Dan, earlier in the pod, when they were celebrating in front of the away fans. The away fans were exceptional last night, singing throughout the game, all game. I haven't heard that for a very long time from Villa fans, just because it's been so painful going away from home for so many years. They're really buying into it now. They're loving it. They're loving going away from home. Villa have scored in every single game under Emery. I mean,
we were so porous under Gerrard, weren't we? Porous.
Yeah, but the fact that they're scoring, not so much keeping clean sheets. The fact that they're scoring every game is fantastic. They're on the longest consecutive run of scoring goals in games across the division, and that's ahead of Man City and Arsenal. So there's just so many positives at the moment. And the fact they've only conceded one goal from outfield play in 6 games is another huge bonus.
Yeah, I mean, I need to stop doing this because I think it helps the context. I do need to stop doing it because I'm actually annoying myself with it by going back to the previous manager all the time. But if I go back to January under Steven Gerrard, there's a manager there that was adamant, I need this, I need that. We need new players. We need this. We need that. The players there aren't good enough. I actually find it really refreshing that Emery didn't do that in January. Now, I looked back over Twitter last night, a few replies to tweets I'd done in January, and some Villa fans were absolutely losing their mind that we didn't buy anyone. I know we bought Moreno and Duran, but I mean, that we didn't significantly strengthen the squad in January. But actually, again, I just think this shows what a good manager Unai Emery is, that he didn't want to rush. No need. I don't need anyone. I'll just work with what I've got. Do you think he could have envisaged that it would have gone as well as it is going at the moment in January?
No, I don't think so. We ran out of time with him last night. I was going to ask him that exact question, but we ran
Next
out of time,
Greg.
so I'll get him on that on Friday. But will be interesting to see if he answers that honestly, because I'm sure that everybody in the club thinks that it's going better than they could have imagined. Which, let's be honest, me and you know that. Villa have won 10 games under Emery. It's ridiculous. We didn't expect it to be this good. So I don't think he was entirely happy in January. There were players that he had targeted that Villa weren't able to get done. There were certainly a couple of positions that he wanted to strengthen, and he just realised that there's no point in signing players for the sake of it. There were a couple of specific names that he'd put to the club. They weren't able to get those signings done, so he decided, no, we'll wait. We'll bring Bertrand Traore back, see what he's got. His goal against Leicester last night will make it probably worthwhile bringing him back.
Just justified already, isn't it? Yeah.
He doesn't have to do anything. He's justified that recall just with that goal alone. And yeah, his decision was, look, there are players I want. Can't get them in January. Let's see if we can get them in the summer. And hopefully we'll be around the sort of mid-table positions by then. We look a little bit more of an attractive proposition for players to come in. But now they're at an even higher level where they could potentially be going to signings and saying, well, look, we finished 6th, we finished 7th, we finished 8th, maybe at worst. This is the run that we've been on. This is how ambitious we are for the future. This is what we can offer you. Come and join our club. We're a project that people want to be a part of.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. I think Villa are suddenly becoming an attractive proposition. Obviously, you're with the press all the time. And I told this story the other day on the Villa View that when I was at Leicester last week, obviously it was coming up to them playing Villa. I was talking to another journalist about Villa, and I said Villa. This is before the Chelsea game, by the way. I said Villa are in the top 4 for form in the Premier League since Unai Emery came in, and he was genuinely shocked when I said that. He had kind of gone a little bit under the radar. It feels now since Chelsea and last night, it isn't under the radar anymore. It's there. People are talking about Villa getting into Europe. Do you think that changes things a little bit? Does that put any pressure on at all, or do you just think there's no pressure on it because no one was expecting it?
I don't think there's pressure from within. I think they're really confident now, and they believe in their methods, and they believe that they can go and continue getting this run of results. You've still got Mings and McGinn in that team that remember very well what it was like winning 10 games in a row in the Championship. I know it's a little bit different, but they do have that winning mentality and that Nelson experience. They've got players that are really pumped up to perform as well. Ollie Watkins just continues to score every week. So I think Villa can't go under the radar anymore because there's so many stories around them at the moment. The fact that they're not conceding any goals, the fact that they're scoring every week, the fact that Watkins is scoring so often, the fact that Emery's come back to the Premier League and he's showing actually that he's an elite manager or close to an elite manager and didn't fully get the respect that he deserved at Arsenal. And there are a lot of good performances, and I just think they can't go under the radar for any longer because the results are just there for everyone to see.
Yeah, I thought my phone might be a bit busier this morning from media companies, but actually it hasn't been. I thought right now is the time. I think people are going to want to talk about Villa on the Nationals, but it hasn't come yet, unless they've got someone else in to do, which is highly plausible. Like I guess that could happen. It does feel very reminiscent of that time that Villa won 10 games in a row in the Championship. But we won, how many have we won in a row now? Remind me, Greg. 3, 2, only 2. What was the result before?
3.
Three.
Bournemouth, Chelsea, and Leicester.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not saying for 1 minute we're going to go and win 10 in a row here, but there is an excellent chance to go again against Forest on Saturday, a home game. I think Villa Park will be pumped up now, and I do think the atmosphere at Villa Park in those 10 games did help carry Villa over the line into getting into the playoffs and going and winning it. I'm hoping we can get the same kind of momentum now with everyone singing from the same hymn sheet and pulling in the same direction, because I do think the atmosphere at Villa Park sometimes is lacking. I think now's the time that it really needs to take off, and we need to do our bit as fans. I think it's coming. I'm really looking forward to Saturday now. I'm so excited to get down to Villa Park again and watch them play, because the lads deserve all the praise that's coming their way at the moment for everything that they're doing. You spoke to Douglas Luiz last week, didn't you? Know, it was quite a varied interview on The Athletic. You spoke about a few different things, but what did you garner from him about how things are at the moment? Did that give you an insight into how much things have improved under Emery?
Yeah, nice guy. Actually, the first time I've ever interviewed him, which is a bit of a surprise, really, because he's been at the club for what?
Long-serving,
3.5 seasons, for nearly 4 seasons. So yeah, actually one of the longest-serving players there, which was quite funny when we discussed that. Yeah, so yeah, his English has come on much better. He could understand all the questions that I asked him, but he just preferred to speak in Portuguese, so we did it through a translator, just because it was a bit more comfortable for him to explain some of the bits that I asked him in a bit more detail. But yeah, I suppose the key takeaways from the interview was that he feels like he's in the best form of his life. He feels like he can either score or assist every week. I asked him, because so many other players have said that the manager has worked so closely with them on finer details and physically moving them around the training ground to get them in the right positions, and sending them video clips to study at home, etc. I asked Doug whether he thought what Emery had done for him, and his answer was pretty simple and a bit of a surprise, really. He just said simpler, I feel more free in midfield under him, whereas I was a bit more restricted in under other managers. I think Dean Smith probably tried to play him too much as a defensive midfielder, and it didn't quite work. I think also when he has the support of quite a strong back four and Boubacar Kamara when he's in there, that helps. But also, probably the biggest compliment I can pay him is that in Kamara's absence, his form hasn't got any worse, and he's actually performing really well on his own merit and deserves the credit himself. So he's made the most interceptions of any Villa midfielder. He's made the most passes into the final third of any midfielder. I think he's got the joint highest amount of assists. He's scored in a couple of goals. He's doing extra set piece coaching with Austin McPhee, who definitely deserves a mention, because I think that Villa's set piece routines are becoming much more varied and quite fun actually to watch. Ashley Young went close with one last night, and that was something straight off the training ground. So yeah, Douglas Luiz is a big part of that. But yeah, he's just really happy at Villa. We spoke also about the links to Arsenal. Arsenal were very, very interested in taking him on board for they bid £25 million back in September after he'd scored a goal directly from a corner at the Emirates. So a bit of a weird sort of 24 hours for him. I asked him a little bit about that, about how he felt. Because if the team at the top of the Premier League are interested in you, it's going to turn your head. You're going to be interested.
Did he want to go? Did you get the impression that he wanted to go? Because he wasn't really in the team at the time. I was shocked when he signed a new contract under Gerrard, because he was not a Gerrard favourite at all. He'd always be the fall guy, always find himself out of the team. So I was really surprised when he signed a new contract. And to be fair to him, I would have expected him to be a bit down, morale a bit low, could have gone to the team that were top at the time, wasn't in the Villa team. I think he deserves a lot of credit for keeping his head up and keeping going, and he's having a tremendous season. Yeah,
I mean, look, he said Villa didn't want to sell him, so which we know. Villa refused to sell him. They weren't interested in the bids from Arsenal, so I couldn't get fully into the mindset of whether he wanted to go or not. But he said, "Look, I remained very calm during that 24 hours. It had happened to him before when he was moving from Brazil, and there were plenty of other clubs interested in him. He just said the only thing that was a little bit of a worry for him was that his contract was expiring at Villa at that point. So Villa said to him when Arsenal came in for him, look, we're going to keep you. We want you to stay. We'll sort your contracts out in the next few weeks ahead. And they stuck to their word, rewarded him with a better deal on enhanced terms, and something that he was obviously interested in. It was having that security and staying for a little bit longer. So I think the fact that Villa are able to get him on a deal is they deserve praise for that, because obviously he's turning into a very important player for the team.
It must be close to getting back in that Brazil squad. Can't be far off at all, Douglas Luiz. Such a good footballer. I mean, I remember when we started doing 1874, me and you were never sure about Douglas Luiz. I don't think we doubted him as a footballer. I think we thought he was a good footballer. I think we just, like you said, I don't think we liked him being the lone defensive midfielder, because at the start, as you would, he did make mistakes and he did a few things that cost Villa goals. And I felt worried when he was a number 6, but he came back after lockdown, in fairness, and was absolutely brilliant at the tail end of that season as well. Then maybe form fluctuated a little bit, very, very up and down in the time ahead. But I thought at the start of the season he was very unlucky not to be in the team under Steven Gerrard, because at the time I felt he was our best central midfield player. And you just watch him now, really anything he can't do in central midfield. And him and Kamara is a really nice partnership when Kamara's fully fit. And, you know, you give McGinn credit as well. You know, you say about Luiz's form hasn't been affected by Kamara not being in. Villa haven't noticed Kamara not being there because McGinn's been so good when he plays central. It's all just working, isn't it?
The two of them have been excellent. You know, Jacob Ramsey as well. I think Jacob Ramsey's turned his, showing a new side of his game. He's winning a lot of tackles and challenges. Just something I never really noticed, or I didn't think he had sort of in his locker. I just expected him to gradually move into this sort of, you know, number 10 type creative player that didn't really do too much of the hard yards, but he certainly does that now. So as a team, I think that midfield, you know, region's working really well.
Yeah, when, again, I'm doing it again, when Gerrard was picking that same midfield 3 of Luiz, McGinn and Ramsey, I was just thinking this is not working.
No.
They're all good players, but for whatever reason, whatever we're doing, the way we're setting up is not suiting those players at the moment. It's great to see them now in a setup that gets the best out of them and gets them all work. Because I never for 1 minute thought they were bad players. I was just fed up of seeing that same midfield wheeled out because it felt too easy to play through, and that none of them were creating anything. So essentially, they were just shuttling between the lines as midfielders, allowing the fullbacks to bomb on. That wasn't working. Whereas now they're all getting to do the things that they're good at, and it's just great to see. It's football simple sometimes. If you let players do the facets of the game that they're good at, they may play well. They'll probably play well, won't they?
I mean, yeah, you say it's simple, but blimey, if you ever watch one of Emery's coaching sessions, I mean, you know,
have you seen any? Have you seen any?
I've seen some, yeah. I've seen some elements of it, yeah. Not at the training ground at Villa, but I've seen some elements of his sessions. If he's been at the club for 5 months, the work that he's put in during those 5 months, probably in a normal, you know, he's a normal full season worth. He's worked. I mean, he's a bit of a cliche, but he's literally the first man in and the last man out. You know, he's there at sort of 8-9 o'clock at some nights at Bodymoor Heath, just, you know, going over footage and preparing sessions and working on individual, you know, movements that for various players. And look, you know, honestly, the level of detail, it's something else. He really has put his heart and soul into this. But he does that at any other job. You know, that's what he does. That's what he's known for. Football, you know, again, a cliche, is his life. He, you know, gives literally everything for it. And I think what Villa benefited from was having that little break during the World Cup period where they could practice things that he really wanted to implement and just get to know each other a little bit better. Because, you know, when you change your manager in the middle of the season, you don't usually get that break, you know, that period of togetherness where you can work on various things. And yeah, there were some early teething problems, of course, and we've seen how Villa's midfield struggled at times, you know, from the passing out from the back. Martinez there was a few confusing moments with Dendoncker and Kamara and Luiz and McGinn, you know, all at different times. But I just think having that little period during the World Cup certainly helped them.
Even those growing pains when you've made the mistakes, they will have helped, you know, long term. Now, our players look so comfortable in possession. When a Villa player picks up a ball in a tight space now, sometimes I'm a little bit worried when it's near our own penalty box. But no, the midfielders pick the ball up sometimes on the halfway line and they manage to wriggle themselves out of trouble. And there's just always someone to pass to. There's always a Villa player in. Confidence is massive in football. You know, we've spoken to footballers before. You know what a part confidence plays in football. But a Villa player can just seem to wriggle out of a tight space. And because of the way Villa operate and the way they play, there's always someone in space to pass to. That's the bit that amazes me. I've never seen a Villa team have players in space. I know that sounds stupid. I've been going to Villa a long, long time. It's something that's always bothered me, that Villa players don't ever seem to pick the ball up in space. Now they just do because of the rotations and the way they work and the way they move the ball. It's all so measured and precise under Emery now. I find it, even, you know, it's not free-flowing at times, but I always find it interesting to watch now, Greg.
Yeah, and it was quite interesting last night, actually, because for the first sort of 10, 12 minutes, it wasn't quite working. You know, Leicester brought Mendy in, dropped Tete to the bench, so they had sort of an extra central midfielder. And for a while, Villa were Leicester were just happy to sort of have every man behind the ball, allow Konza, Mings, Moreno, and sorry, Konza, Mings, and Ashley Young, and to an extent Moreno, just have the ball in their own half and pass between them. And Villa remained patient at that point, but there was no sort of passing lines. There was no space in the middle because Leicester had blocked it all off. But as the game slightly opened up and Leicester tried to do a little bit more themselves, those gaps appeared, and that's where Villa took advantage. And I think the key for Villa now is being able to mix it up. If you look at the goals, it's a great example of what Villa have been trying to do. Konza on the ball, taking his time with it, waiting for the right pass into midfield, and then it's bang, quick into Douglas Luiz, a quick turn into Buendia. He quickly turns himself, plays Watkins in, and it's a goal. A brilliant goal and something that they've worked on really well, but there's loads of little different options that they can do now. We know that they attack frequently through Moreno. He's
been good. He was good last night. He was our best player.
It's funny you should say that because a lot of other Villa fans said that, and I'm thinking, am I watching like the wrong game here now? I thought he got forward a lot, but there was a little period in the second half where he kept giving the ball away, and I've noticed that a little bit with him in general. He gives the ball away a lot, but I like him. I'm enjoying watching him. I think that he gives Villa
he's a bit more dynamic at left back than Luca.
Yeah, he gives them an attacking, real clear attacking option. He's really quick. Interviewed him a couple of weeks ago, and he said his speed is one of the things that really helps him. He works on that, and Emery's been telling him exactly where he needs to play. But as we know, the left back role is slightly different to the right back role. The left back can get forward more often. Just think he's a little bit careless in possession at times, which maybe he needs to work on. But certainly feels like a better fit, in terms of form than Dinu at the moment.
I think with Murray, it's a little bit similar to Buendia, and he does give the ball away sometimes because he's trying things. He's trying to progress. He's trying to move the ball forward. I've got to be honest, I didn't notice that last night. You're obviously a better place to watch the game than I was last night, watching it from the press box. I didn't notice that. But I do think sometimes when he gives the ball away, it's because he's trying something different. He's trying to unlock a defence because he plays high. When you think about how deep the right back is, the left back is high.
We need to give him that credit because it's like the same with Bailey. Look, Bailey's given the ball away the most. Bailey's lost possession the most amount of times for Villa. Now, typically that's what happens with wingers. They do give the ball away the most in the team because they're the creative force. They're asked to go at their man. They're asked to do something a little bit more explosive or different in the final third. And to be fair, I do take your point because Moreno is effectively, when Villa are attacking, a winger. So he's getting in more dangerous positions, and it's obviously harder to deliver in those positions. So, maybe I'm being a little bit too critical. I just feel like if he could be a little bit better on the ball, not give possession away as often, my word, would they have a good player there?
Yeah, came from nowhere, that signing as well. No one would have said that we needed a left back at the time as a desperation. I think everyone just wanted a centre forward, in all honesty, at that time. But no one really knew the run that Ollie Watkins was going to go on. But I think Morano's been, for the money they paid, he's been a really astute signing. He's been a really good signing, and that's promising because I'm assuming, and it's pretty obvious, that he's someone that Emery identified from his time in La Liga as someone that would suit Villa and suit the Premier League. So that's the type of player he's identified. That was a relatively low fee as well. I think we can be excited going into the summer. Just before we go, I just wanted to say, do you think Bertrand Traoré will start now at the weekend? Do you think he'll come in for Leon Bailey? I don't think he will, but I think you'll see a longer period on the pitch.
I think, when a player has a moment like that, they deserve the chance to build on a little bit of momentum. So I wouldn't be totally surprised. Bailey didn't start at Chelsea, did he? So it's not like he's going to be tired for having 3 games in a week. I'm not entirely convinced on Traoré. I don't think he's really any better than Bailey. I think they're very similar in terms of what they produce. But yeah, to answer your question, God, I don't know.
In that respect, though, he probably deserves a chance, doesn't he?
I think just because, the momentum, the goal, the moment, the fact that all the players were really rounding him, and that the supporters were giving him such a good send off. I think it'd be good for him to have a go in that first half against Nottingham Forest, a team under pressure at Villa Park. He might just build on that momentum and produce something special again.
Yeah, I won't ask you too much about him because I don't want to spoil your piece that's going on The Athletic, but I look forward to reading that this afternoon. And also, I haven't read your piece from this morning yet, so I need to go through and read that. I said it was my last question. I've got one more question. Kamara, because is what's going to happen with him? Is he out for a bit? Do we know?
We don't know at this stage. No, he trained very well last week in the build up to the Chelsea game. Started obviously at Chelsea, but just didn't quite feel right. And Emery could recognise that. He picked up a yellow card in the first half. And
he hurt himself getting that yellow card as well, didn't he?
Yeah, I think it just wasn't worth the risk of continuing with a player who was A, on a yellow card, B, a little bit unfit, and C, clearly not ready because he didn't even make the squad yesterday. So a couple of reporters asked him about about his injury yesterday, and he just said, "Look, don't know at this stage," which to me didn't sound too good because usually if there's a chance of him returning, then Emery does he's usually pretty honest with injuries and says, look, we expected him to be back in a week or two or longer. But when he doesn't say anything, that's when it's usually a bit more of a concern. But we'll wait and see.
Yeah, I mean, the great thing is at the moment, McGinn and Away is a flourishing in central midfield. Yeah, and it's still Dendoncker. Still Dendoncker to come in as well. You forget in Emery's first game against Manchester United, Dendoncker started and was good. I mean, he probably hasn't really started since, but he was good in that game. So there is options there. I've got to admit,
Kamara hadn't played, had he? He was
Kamara came on
and then played the next game. So
yeah, I was worried at one point when Watkins started down because he's grimacing, and that didn't look good. And I was thinking, oh no, this is an absolute disaster because we would be in trouble if we lost him at the moment. So that's the only thing that could hurt Villa at the moment is that if they picked up an injury to a key player because they're not blessed with massive depth.
Yeah,
at the moment. If they lose Watkins, that would be absolutely horrendous. My heart was in my mouth last night, but luckily he got up, carried on, and scored, which is what he seems to be doing at the moment. Greg, thank you ever so much for chatting to me today. Thank you very much to everyone that's watched the 1874 show, whether you've watched it on YouTube, Spotify, or listened to it elsewhere. Thank you very much. We appreciate the support. And again, thanks for the support on the video last night because the numbers on YouTube in particular were absolutely ridiculous. Greg and myself will be back with another 1874 post Nottingham Forest at some point, and there'll be all the other usual pre and post match shows as well. So subscribe to the channel with your post notifications on to realize exactly when those videos and audios are coming out wherever you get your podcasts. Do all the stuff that you need to do. Give the video a like, comment as well. As I say, I'll try and get more involved in the comments on YouTube because I've not been very good at doing that in the last year or so. What day is it, Greg? Wednesday? Are we on Wednesday now? Enjoy the rest of your week, and as always,